One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
We took the freeway out of town, found a place to settle down, bought a driveway with a swing set and a dog. You got your very own bathroom, I got my very own workshop in the basement. Sit around staring at the wall to wall. Take field trips to our favorite mall. Waiting for the day when all the kids grow up and leave us here. If you need me, I'll be downstairs, so we'll shop back. You can call and I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop vac on. But you'll be okay, 'cause you'll be upstairs with the TV. You can cry and I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop vac on. We hung our flag above the door, checked out the gourmet grocery store. I bought a mower I can ride around the yard. But we haven't got real friends, and now even the fake ones have stopped calling. Maybe if you forget to hide the keys, I'll take a ride to Applebee's. Come home drunk on daiquiris and throw up on the neighbor's lawn. If you need me, I'll be downstairs with the shop vac. You can call, but I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop vac on. But you'll be okay, 'cause you'll be downstairs with the TV. You can cry and I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop vac on. Morning.
Good morning.
My voice is a little
Yeah, it's probably Megatron variant.
Well, it's a Ritz cracker variant.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it to you.
Well, I always think in my head, like, oh, a small something right before getting in bed won't make my mouth feel fuzzy in the morning.
Yeah.
After I brush my teeth.
Yeah.
Like, you brush your teeth, and then, then for some reason you're still awake for a minute.
Yeah.
And you go through the kitchen, and you're like, oh, a Ritz cracker won't undo all of the brushing of the teeth. But it does every time you try it.
Now
I had a Ritz cracker last night.
Yeah.
And now,
Does your mouth feel like it's full of rabbit fur?
Yeah. I like the Starbucks here. It's better than the other one. 'Cause the other one is not as good. They really need to put a light here, 'cause it's hard to turn. It's hard to make a left turn. Have you heard this song before?
No.
Shot back.
No, it was pretty sad, though.
Good song. What now?
It was pretty sad.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. It's also not being played very well, but that's, again, not my fault. It's the listener's fault.
Yeah.
They're not hearing it well.
Pull it together,
It's
boys.
not me. Huh?
I said, pull it together, boys.
Yeah, I know. For real. It's like, all right, let's see. Hold on. You gotta get a clapping to see. If you need me, I'll be downstairs with the shot back. You can call and I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop back on. You'll be okay, 'cause you'll be upstairs with the TV. You can cry and I probably won't hear you, 'cause it's loud with the shop back on. Okay, alright, feeling better. Alright. Okay.
Okay.
Ritz Cracker be gone! Ritz Cracker be gone! Why does that happen? Why is it just me? Am I the only one that can't eat a Ritz Cracker before bed without your mouth feeling like that?
I don't know that I've tried a Ritz cracker, but yeah, you don't eat after you brush your teeth.
If you brush it, it's like any tiny thing. Like I didn't have a meal or anything, just like one Ritz Cracker.
Yeah, that's all it
Because it was
takes.
sitting out by itself in the sleeve, just the last one. And I thought, I'll eat that before it goes stale or something. Not that I guess it would by the morning. But it just looked like you should eat it because there was one in a wrapper. Right?
Yeah, I kind of needed to be
Am
eaten.
I the weird one here? Is this my fault?
Well, yeah, but not in this case specifically.
Okay. So it's not me. It's Ritz.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Is the election, are you ready for the election to be fortified again?
Well, I don't think that new bill is going to pass, but nonetheless, it's
that's what I mean.
guaranteed to be some chicanery.
Well, because as Biden said, he said when asked about could this election be illegitimate, he said, I quote, "I think it would easily be illegitimate." That's what he said. And he said the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is in proportion to whether or not these bills pass.
Wow.
So already the stage is laid for, listen, if you win, it's cheating. If I win, the will of the people.
Yeah, I mean,
which is what everyone says, and they're all right because voting is stupid. It's never worked.
Well, it's probably good that we all sort of admit to ourselves that the electoral process is a joke. I mean, honestly.
We do need to do that, and I'm glad that we are having that conversation. You know, that's what woke people say. They say we got to have that conversation. Yeah. They'll say like the most horrible things imaginable and say that's a serious conversation that needs to be had. Killing everyone in Papua New Guinea is a serious conversation that needs to be had. Yeah. Like, just whatever it is, they'll say the most insane things and then frame it as this needs to be up for, like, discussion.
That's just a way of, like, jamming something inside the Overton window that doesn't belong there. You know? You make this assertion that we need to discuss it, and you can't... It's currently out of favor to say, no, we don't. We don't need to discuss that at all. It's stupid. Which is how those things should be answered.
The other one is... Can we talk about this? Can we talk about it yet? With a question mark?
Say
like,
no.
I don't know. Just talk about it if you want to talk about it. Like, why do people ask permission to talk about something? I've never done that in my entire life. Even in, like, school, which was a problem.
Yeah.
I would just start talking. And the teacher would be giving a lecture, you know, or whatever. I mean, not that they do anything in school.
Right.
It's just a place for them to... it's just babysitting, really.
Yeah.
Is what school is. And so she would be talking about like Don Quixote or something, and I would pipe up and go, this isn't as good as Tolkien. She'd get all mad. but it was because it was true.
Yeah,
it wasn't
it's true.
story.
Yeah.
But she was a Spanish lady, like not Hispanic, like Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
And she was angry
Mm-hmm.
because Don Quixote isn't he's Spanish, right? Am I wrong? That's Italian, not Italian. Is it Spanish, right?
Yeah, it's Spanish. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Of course. And so she was not that there's any difference. And she was mad that her person clearly wasn't as good as an Anglophile person.
Yeah.
Which is true of all of them. I mean, like, we've got Tolkien, Shakespeare, John Milton.
Right.
It's all better than whatever they've got. Some people like to be like, the Dante. And I'm sure it's okay in Italian, right? I'm sure it is. I can't read Italian, but in English it doesn't flow very well. I'm just saying. The poetry doesn't flow well in English, and if you judge something by its translation rather than its authentic language, it loses. But yeah, I'm ready for the election to be fortified. Today we're going to talk about divorce, which is why I sung that song,
Mm-hmm.
and the falling apart of the family.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about and why maybe that is happening, and why maybe it's not, and maybe what can be done about it.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to talk about because this is something that one of our listeners brought up in a sarcasm-y way, I think.
Yeah.
Because he said you guys need to have like an intro reel. Because I have trouble, like you guys will have something good to talk about, like very practical,
Mm-hmm.
like your segment last week. But then I can't share it with anybody because the next thing will be like on Tartaria or something.
Yeah.
And they don't, which is sort of what you said at the beginning of this season when we had our, what would approximate as a business meeting. And you were like, it's difficult to market alternative cosmology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's probably true.
Yeah.
So today, in keeping with that theme, we're going to talk about divorce. But before that, I want to talk about how a lot of this fake space stuff.
Sweet.
And how no one has ever gone to space or is in space now. And especially Elon Musk. I want to destroy Elon Musk. And maybe, and talk about something I don't really believe, but that I find interesting. I can't disprove it. Continue.
Okay. No, before we start the space talk, I want to tell you that I space pilled my wife the other day with that video you sent me of the four astronauts doing flips and the guy's on the wire and the dude grabs his other wire or his buddy's wire to keep him in the shot. And then if you look at that lady's hair, I'll post a link in the show notes, but if you look at that lady's hair, it's obviously she just hung upside down and her hair is like hairsprayed, so it's like sticking straight up because it doesn't move at all. It's like a big helmet on her head that just goes everywhere.
It's so stupid when you see it.
Yeah.
You get mad about it.
Yeah.
Like it's like a magician when you realize how dumb the trick is. You get like, that was it? I hate you. For you fooling me with something that stupid.
Right. But what kills me is the tweet that it was attached to. The guy just tags hashtag flat earth. I'm like, you got to tailor your message a little bit. Let's get to fake space and like figure that one out.
I know. But when people get that woken up.
Yeah.
You can't help, but you just got to start shouting it in the street. It's like Morpheus said in the new movie, not to rehash the Matrix, but he said, when I realized the world was fake, my life purpose became clear.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you, Morpheus.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. But yeah, the tailoring your message, that's what everyone always says. This is what people say to me on this show, tailor the message.
Yep.
But I have a difficult time discerning between tailoring the message and not sharing the message.
It's tough. That's a real struggle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because I don't know what you people want or need. I don't know how much you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
Can you handle that? Look, like I said, when you see it, you get it's like, I'm a dummy. And that's partly why people don't. Did you see, Penn and Teller, the magician?
Yeah.
The one, Penn now, his daughter's become trans because,
Yeah, everybody's daughter's trans now, I think.
Because, well, he's a famous atheist person, and that has to happen.
Right.
Can't.
Yeah, but Ted Cruz too, buddy. I mean...
Is Ted Cruz's kid trans now?
Yeah, or something like that, or bisexual, or I don't know, some stupid...
I haven't heard that.
Whatever stupid thing
is it a woman? Is it a girl child or a boy child?
Girl child.
Oh, well, she's not bisexual. And that's just something women say. It's true. The women just say that because, one, women imagining themselves with other women is not... It doesn't produce the same level of disgust that straight men imagining themselves with other men produces.
Okay.
One, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And then two, they just say that to fit in at school and be sort of quirky.
Yeah.
A woman saying I'm bisexual in 2022 is the same thing as a young woman putting on goth makeup was in like 2002.
Yeah, good point.
It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like, I'm goth, I'm into skeletons. It's like... You're not. No, you're not. You're not a creepy witch. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're not a creepy witch. There are women that are creepy witches, and you don't want to be them because they're all ugly and weird.
Yeah.
In a way that you're trying to do like a death cab for cutie, cute thing here. You're not actually goth. You're trying to be flirty death cab for cutie or something.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with being bisexual. That's just, I mean, that is it's there. I don't even. Women just say that so they sound interesting. Like oh, I'm LGBTQ whatever. They just want something to put in their bio.
Well, the I guess the corollary to this is that just saying that you're straight and normal is like saying you're Amish today. In some circles.
Right, which is interesting because the Amish are objectively more interesting. Like, even if you don't want to live their lifestyle, they have an interesting lifestyle.
They do.
Right?
Yeah.
So, it's like, but just saying like like being gay isn't interesting anymore. There was a time when it was, even if you didn't like it and you thought it was like interesting. It's like, oh... You wear spandex on a yacht or whatever.
Right.
They do. And I don't know what gays do in their free time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they listen to a lot of oldies for some reason. There's an age when a gay man crosses a threshold and he becomes like just a complaining asexual queen.
Yeah.
Like, this is about 42, this happens.
Yeah.
They stop going out with or dating anybody, and they just sit around at night getting drunk and complaining about things.
Yeah, and listening to, like, crooner music.
Well, the ones I know all listen to, like, Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, there you go. He's a crooner.
Or something.
Yeah.
Like, things that were popular, 80 years ago or whatever. And I don't know why that happens, but it does. But yeah, Ted Cruz's daughter isn't... That's nothing. If a young man says I'm bisexual, that just means I'm gay.
Right.
If a young woman says I'm bisexual, that just means tee-hee, I'm quirky. That's all that ever means.
She quirked up.
Women don't know what words mean. They just say them. It's a problem this is why men and women can't communicate, because women will say things and men mistake that for meaning that they mean something.
Well, it sounds like we're already getting into the marriage advice section.
Well, if you think that any woman is using language to describe anything other than their emotional state at the time, then you're not going to make it.
Yeah. Well, I do have to often remind myself that what sounds like a request for help or solutions is not that.
Yeah,
and you're just supposed to listen. You're just supposed to stand there and listen, and that's it.
Yeah, because she needs to. She can't. That's how women process information. Is just babbling through verbiage.
Yes.
Until they feel better about it.
It's true.
That's all that they use it for. Like you can't pin anything. And I know women are listening to this being like, but you know I'm right. You know I'm right. So, what were we even talking about? You sidetracked me with Ted Cruz's. Oh, Penn and Teller.
Okay.
Penn and Teller. And in the space. This is all about space, really.
Okay.
Penn and Teller had a show you called Fool Me. Have you seen it?
No.
It's a fun show. It's a fun show if you haven't seen it. But basically, they've been master magicians for a long time. So now what they do is they sit in a little seat in the audience, in a special seat. And they invite other younger magicians to come on and perform a trick. And if Penn and Teller cannot figure out how the trick was performed, that person wins the prize.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Right, so they'll have
yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, they never, and the Penn and Teller never outright tell you the trick to the audience, but they'll like describe it in such a way, like they'll be like, well, you know, Corey Matheson in the 1870s, he used to do a little thing with a pigeon's feather where he would, he said, even if you keep your eye on it, you don't watch it. Am I close? And, you know, it'll be some extremely inside baseball.
Okay.
Magic talk. Mm-hmm. Where the other person will be like, you got me. Yeah, that's what I did. Basically a variation of that. They're like, okay. The old Malthusian pigeon feather trick.
Yeah.
But this time with a coin, you know, or something. And so some of the ones that fooled them are pretty interesting. But one of the ones that fooled them, you know, because I was thinking for a while, I was like, that was crazy. How do you do that? And then on a second rewatch, I was like, it's so stupid. Of course that's what he did. And I got mad about it for not seeing it the first time.
Okay.
And it was this where he ate a cookie and then swallowed it with milk, opened his mouth and let you see it. And then he like counted with his fingers and opened his mouth again and there was another cookie.
What?
And I was like, that's crazy. So the premise of the joke was he had the magic trick. He had people follow along with him, like everyone copy what I do. And this is how you get the people invested in the actions and watching other people,
okay.
and then like they're doing it, right? And so then this is seals the trick because they are thinking they're doing everything you do, but really you're doing one other step you didn't show them. Right? Mm-hmm. It's all about like leading people's minds to think there's no way you could have denied it. So it's basically he lays out a table with like cookies and milk, Oreo cookies, and a napkin. And he says, follow along with me. And he just starts, you know, whatever. He takes about a cookie. People bite the cookie, eat it, drink the milk, bite the cookie. He then bites another cookie and then drinks the milk. And then he gets a little bit of milk on his face. So he picks up the napkin. Everyone picks up the napkin. They wipe their face. He puts it down. Right? Then he opens his mouth again. Everyone else's cookie's gone. And his is still in his mouth without any milk soak. Right?
Okay.
And all he did when that won the fool me thing, and it sounds, the way I described it, you may have figured out how it happened, even just describing it.
Mm-hmm.
But all it was in his napkin, he had another cookie.
Right.
And when he went to wipe his mouth, he just put it in his mouth, really sly-like. And everyone else is like, what happened? And that's all space is. It's that dumb. It really is that, like, stupid. It's like, they're just hanging upside down? That's all it is. They're just hanging upside down on the International Space Station. Again, or occasionally they're in, like, a Vomit Comet airplane.
Yeah.
That's diving. But all the ones where they're just sitting there talking, they're literally just hanging upside down.
Well, we kind of, when I showed my wife that video, we kind of spent, I don't know, like 30 minutes watching other videos about theater performer flying rigs and the equipment that they use to make people fly on stage with the little pivots on the hips and all that stuff. And
yeah.
And then we watched it again, the space video again, and she was like, "Oh, I get it." Because it's once you understand, once you see behind the curtain, it's obvious. And then that lady's hair was it was ridiculous. She looked like Elvira or whatever.
Yeah, if your hair,
Bride of
if
Frankenstein.
the long hair, if they were in zero gravity, it would be like wafting around,
Yeah.
like a serpent,
Right,
a
like
Medusa's
when
hair.
you're when someone with long hair is underwater.
Underwater,
Yeah.
which it never is. It's just hanging up. It's just sticking up.
Yeah, they just sprayed her hair up and they
Strange.
hung her upside down. And
Yeah, it's just like the Chinese guys on their recent space thing where they were just standing in a garage and they had straps over their feet.
Yeah.
And they were like, see? That's all. It's so stupid that's how it's pulled off, because people are like, well, it couldn't be that simple. You know?
Yeah.
But it is. It's that dumb. I've watched them on the thing, like on the like supposed ISS live stream or whatever, like temporarily, like for just a moment, like become transparent as they pass from one green screen to another.
oh no.
Just like really, and then and you're like, what happened? And you can like rewind it, and you can see it, and people have done this, and you can like record it and put it on the internet and show them like, listen, they're going through a thing, and people are like, no, they're still in space.
It is their job is getting harder because, if you live stream something on YouTube, you can back it up and watch it again and slow it down and watch it.
Which is why
watch
they
it 20
stopped
times.
that, I think.
Yeah.
They weren't good enough. This is why there's no live. This is why they're all like recorded and stuff. Because you'd think like, well, why don't you just put a camera on the thing all the time?
Yeah, good question. Let's have a live
They
stream.
never do.
Yeah.
They never do. Just for the same reason they never put like a camera on a rocket going all the way to space and just show it to you. Because no one's in space. Because maybe you can't go to space. I don't know. I don't know what happens when you go real high. But no one's ever been, which is higher than like a high altitude balloon or something. Because all the evidence of them on these stations is just them on harnesses. And I know people are like, well, this is too far out there. That they've been, because this is also, it gets back to the thing of like, well, every country in the world would have to be in on it. And yes, or something. At least all the ones that purport to go on the ISS.
At some point, you kind of join a club, I think. The Space Club.
Yeah, you joined the Space Club.
I think maybe like their espionage agency has the dirt on how fake space is. And so they say, if you don't let us in the Space Club, we're going to out you guys. And they're like, all right, fine. You guys can be in the Space Club. And they all get together and make space videos together.
Yeah, let's all get together and hang upside down.
Yeah.
With hair gel. And that's basically what global espionage is at this point.
Yep.
Like spies, this is the thing. Spies are so stupid. They're not even cool. Like once upon a time, one could imagine that like spies were like James Bond.
Yeah.
But all it really is like there's a nerdy guy being paranoid, and then someone sits down beside him and be like, you got the documents? I have the secret documents. And he slides them an envelope.
Yeah.
And then he opens it, and then he reseals it with like wax. And he scurries across the thing and slides the paper to another guy, who then scurries back and gives it back to the first guy.
Yeah.
They're just playing a weird LARP game. They're not doing anything. All of the agent, they're not doing, it's all nonsense. They're just, the only thing they do is manufacture space videos and occasionally false flags.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Like for instance, one time, when I think it was, who was it? Was it W, or was it the other one before him? The other Bush, the Herbert.
I don't know. What's the event?
One of the Bushes. I'm pretty sure it was one of the Bushes. Or maybe the Cheney that was with the Bush. I don't know. It was in a Bush era.
Okay.
Was walking through he was talking to people on like the news, and he was showing people NASA. Right. And in the background of when they're walking through, you could see like the green screen and an astronaut in front of it. Like, and it was the fancy one where it was like sectioned off with blue tape or something.
Uh-huh.
You can do the sections. So like you can do a flat green screen, but if you want to get more resolution, like and more fine control over about the green screen, you can section it off with a different color of tape or something. And then but it was one of those. And then after that, they made up this ridiculous story that because they had to explain this green screen.
Yeah.
About how this was used for like physics experiments.
And
so then they started just showing you the green screen with the astronaut in front of it, allegedly, and he would like toss a ball and then like time how long it took to fly across the lines on the background.
You don't do that in front of yeah. You do that in front of like a checkerboard pattern. You don't do that in front of a green screen.
Or so, yeah, exactly. But the other thing was like, why is this the science?
Right.
Is the guy like, what do you do? You're measuring the speed. We know how fast the ball can be thrown.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I guess we're checking to see if zero gravity is real or something.
Which
like,
you can't
what
do in the NASA office.
What is this? And they had like all these crazy, like basically like the experiments you would do in like a high school physics lab to prove F equals ma.
Right.
And they were doing them in front of like this thing in space, allegedly, being like, see, this is what it was for.
This is some hashtag science right there.
And why that was on Earth with Cheney was never, they're like, oh, that was our test of the experiment thing. It was our model mock-up of the experiment that we really built on the space station.
Yeah.
And it's so stupid. There's no one in... And I know it gets difficult because there are legitimately very, very intelligent people, like our friend of the show, Rockin' Man, who came on.
Yeah.
Who have worked for, or still work for NASA, who think that they are doing something real. Yes. And this gets hard to explain to people because people are like, well, I would know. My uncle worked at NASA, and he made a Voyager that's currently sitting on Venus in the stratosphere or whatever, right? And they just go on and on. And I understand that. It is analogous to the doctors who think they're doing something about COVID now, but who are really just injecting saline into people's arms or something. Right. Or it's not doing, if it's not harmful, it's not doing anything. And they're like, oh, they have all these stats and stuff, and then you just wait a minute. You wait like 5 months. And it's like, oh, that wasn't true, was it? And they go, well, no, but now this one is true. This one's true. They always, like I brought up the other day, do you remember how at the start of the whole quote-unquote pandemic, they were like, had aerial footage of like mass graves in New York being buried in Potter's Field? Right. And at the time, I was like, that's not real. That isn't real. And people were like, Rah! Because at that time, I thought Corona was still real, but I thought, well, the whole like Potter's, that's just... Well, there is a Potter's Field out there because so many people like, there's so many unclaimed dead bodies, the state has to do something with them. But that's not new. That wasn't new to COVID, you know. Exactly. I was like, they bury, but there isn't like I was like, if there were that many people dying that we ran out of graveyards, or whatever, it would be much more noticeable. Right. You know, or they were like, oh, there's Corona graves so big you can see them from space in Iraq or wherever it was. Yeah, I remember that. Which was like, that wasn't true either. It's always not true. None of it's ever true. And if you just wait a while, and then you say, oh, see, but that didn't happen, did it? Yeah. And I'm not quite sure how they pull it off, like, in each... Well, here's what I think... So here's what I know happened, is that after World War II, we brought over some Nazis, one of them being Werner von Braun. And Werner von Braun formed a very close friendship that lasted his whole life with Walt Disney. And that's not made up. You can check that out. Interesting. And they I think they just formed like a little space faking agency. Mm-hmm. whose job it is to take whatever the NASA scientists think that they're doing, which started with the moon landing, which a lot of them believed, but when you look at the thing, it's like, it's obviously not anything, is to make a movie about it, and then all of the engineers in the little control room, when it lands, go, yeah! Woo! We did it! We did it! Woo! And then on the other side is just this fat woman hanging upside down. And that gets very insulting to the engineers who were just fooled. And it's like, then, you know, they didn't do anything. And they didn't do anything. All of their efforts were wasted. And that makes people very mad. It's like saying that your military service was of no use. Yeah. People don't like that. Yep. Even though it's objectively true, at least in the case of Afghanistan. You didn't do anything. You thought you were doing something. The government told you we were doing things. It was all a made-up theater. Nothing happened. None of it was real. You know, you fought and sacrificed and died, and you spent time away from your family, and you lost your legs for nothing. Objectively nothing. It's the same as it was. And that's sort of the bread and butter, is they give you nothing. Right? And so space... and then Elon Musk is like, humanity will never be satisfied until Mars, right? And then he talks about terraforming Mars, and he talks about all this stuff that we're going to do on Mars, allegedly. And then he never goes. Keep in mind, he never himself gets on his spaceship.
Yeah, funny that
goes up. That never happened. He's like, yesterday he tweeted like, we're going to go back to the moon soon. You know, and that isn't going to happen, just letting you know. Because they've been saying we're going back to the moon soon my whole life.
Yep. Now it's just a private agency doing it instead of NASA. But they're, you know, because nobody believes, I think even people that totally accept the standard ideas about what space is and the history of, you know, the moon landing and all that stuff, even they don't really buy what NASA's selling anymore. Like NASA has spent all their capital. Nobody really cares because they're not doing anything cool.
They're not doing anything cool, and they never. It's all this talk. Like every 3 years, a new president gets up there. Trump did it.
Yeah.
Obama did it. Bush did it. Clinton did it. Bush before him did it. Every one of them did it. Where they were like, in 3 to 5 years, we're going back to the moon. And it never happened. Yeah. And every time I'd be like, space is fake. And then people would be like, hey, look, oh yeah, Mr. Fake Space, what are you going to say in 3 to 5 years when we're on the moon? I say, the same thing I say every time when I bring it back up and say, remember how you said that and we're not there? And they go, yeah, but now they're saying in 5 years we're going to be in the moon. And it's just Lucy and Charlie Brown in the football. Where it's like, you're going to be on the moon in 5 years. No, okay, but 5 years from now. Okay, we didn't do it, but 5 years from now. And so I interned at NASA, and this is the main thing I remember is being yelled at by this weird guy over an Excel spreadsheet. Right? And this was my first little inkling that something is wrong. Now, I didn't really know about how fake space was then. But something there, that was like one of those moments. It was like you're in the Matrix and you see the black cat and then he flickers and there's a black cat again.
Yeah.
You know, there was that. So here was the thing. So at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, which, no joke, was started by, I forget his name, some guy into weird occult ritual magic.
Jack Parsons, yes. He like actually tried to summon spirits with his rocketry. That's not even pretend. They don't even pretend that that's not true. He did crazy stuff. Like they tried to conceive the Antichrist. Him and his girlfriend and L. Ron Hubbard was involved in this.
The guy that started JPL literally tried to birth the Antichrist with his like girlfriend.
Yeah, it's
not made up.
Yeah,
I'm not made. It's all just It's all just demons. But anyway, okay. So they would so our job there, we were interns summer, and they said your guys are gonna like go through the process of like designing a rover that goes to Mars. Like just like we do. And see if you are fit for NASA. Right?
Okay.
And spoiler, the only people that were chosen were the people that were nerdy and autistic enough to not see anything wrong with the whole thing. So we have this thing, and then they're gonna tell us. I forget the name of it. It was some stupid nerdy name. It was like the X Team. I think it was that stupid. The X Team, and they're like, so we got like 2 weeks into this, and they're like, there was this guy named Max. I don't remember his last name. No, I shouldn't say it even though it did, but his name was Max, and he was short and bald and stupid. But he was a rocket engineer, right? And so he says, I know what you guys need, because we're having trouble, because they were like, design a Mars rover. Go. And we were all sitting around like, what do we do? I guess it goes on and like literally all we had at the moment was like, we'd like drawn like a rocket on a whiteboard. And it was like, somehow we need one of these and it has to go up.
Yeah.
Because if you just say design a Mars rover, you're like, what? You know, it's like, well, okay, this is big picture concept here. We need a thing that goes up.
Right.
Right? And then it has to land on the other thing. And then and so he's like, I know what you guys need to get you kick-started. You need a session with the X Team.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? Like, literally, that's what he said. Okay. So we go and see the X Team, like, the next day. And the X Team was sold as this team that, like, you take a broad concept mission, and then they within 24 hours, they'll give you, like, the basic necessary parameters. Right?
Yeah.
And they're like this wizards or whatever of math and science, and they just know. And so we go deep into the bowels of JPL, into this big building, which I liked the building because it was very like 70s office, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Which has always been my thing. The retro office space. I could just live in a retro office space. You know, with like the sound of a fax machine in the background the whole time.
Yeah, man.
That'd be awesome. You know, and like a vague smell of coffee and cigarettes on a shag carpet. Ugh. What could be better, you know? But anyway, it was like that. And you go down and down into it, and you're getting into more and more like colorless corridors. And then we see this door. And on the door is a sticker, like a bumper sticker, and it says, the X Team. And so you go in there. And there's like 50 people in this room, right? And they're all sitting around, like in sort of an inverted round table. Like, so they're all in a circle, but they're facing out. Okay. Because they're looking at computer screens. That are out, and they're in the circle. And then you're like, wow, and we tell them like, okay, we're supposed to put a rover on Mars, and they start clacking, you know. And they're asking us different things, and I would say things like, it would be cool if it could like measure the soil. And they were like, clack, 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 clack. What else do you want it to do? And it was like, it should have an arm that like can grab things, and like, clack, 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 clack. And then whatever you do, I think someone was like, what if it had a laser? You know, just it was that dumb. Right? And then I look around for a minute, and for a moment, I'm like lost in the whoa, these people are like clacking the future here.
Yeah,
you know,
which is what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, I was like, wow. And then I start looking around, and I notice, wait a minute, all they have open on their screens is Microsoft Excel, and it's true. It's all that. It was various windows of Excel. I'm not joking, right? And so I remember going, and so they had this, basically they had like a very ornate and shared Microsoft Excel document. Okay. That when one of them would edit it, would be edited on all of them at the same time.
Okay.
And they were only allowed, each of them, to like work on one small section so they wouldn't be overriding each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one was like payload, and it was like the amount of kilograms, and it was like the fuel, and the other one was like, well, what do you want to do this? And it would calculate, and it would do all these things, and it would like all these variables, and then the end result would be like how much it would have to weigh, what amount of thrust you would need, how much it would cost, like what time of year it would be possible. And it's like, I mean, I guess it's not anything that you or I couldn't do.
Sure.
If we just sat around long enough and fussed with it. It was just a bunch of if-then statements, basically.
Right.
And that was SpaceX. And they're click-clacking away, or not SpaceX, that was the X team, and they're click-clacking away. And at some point I said something. I said, well, aren't you guys like designing a lunar rover? Because I think they were at the time, allegedly. I don't know if anything ever came of that.
Okay.
And I said, why don't we just rather than because I piped up and I said, what if instead of rehashing all this, we just took the template from the lunar rover you guys are currently working on, and then we just like tweaked it for Mars, right? Yeah. And then the click-clacking stops. The click-clacking just... And there's this one nerdy guy. He looks like he was probably in the Air Force once upon a time. He's still keeping his Air Force look. He's got like a buzz cut. Okay. And glasses, and like they all love lanyards and badges.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just love lanyards. They have so many, like 70. They could all go on one lanyard, but no. They have like a thumb drive on a lanyard, because that's cool. Yeah. And he just looks at me, and he stands up from his click-clacking. And he says, "Oh, that's a good idea." And he says it like that. Right? It's not like they're completely different planets. And I was like,
well, if all the design parameters can be spat out by an Excel spreadsheet, it shouldn't be that really. That's not an unreasonable idea.
That was my point. Yeah. Right. And he was like, and then he started like banging on the table and like a whiteboard. And he was like, and he said this, I remember it still. Cause I would say I said something like, at this point, shouldn't it be mostly similar? Like, I know we'll have to tweak it later, right? For whatever. And he started banging on the thing going like this, like, and every word he would punctuate by slapping his hand into a thing, right? Uh-huh. Other than being completely the same, it's totally different. And he would say that he said that like 3 times real loud.
Oh, man.
Other than being, and then Max was getting embarrassed. The guy that was like assigned to us. Okay. There was Max and there was Ron. And Ron was definitely gay, but was not out and was married, and there was a sham.
Oh no.
But Max and Ron were getting like red-faced because these college kids were here getting screamed at by the X team guy for what was objectively a reasonable question. And then Max would go, all right, yeah, he doesn't know. He didn't know. No, because he was like Italian. Right. And then, he'd go, Mamma Mia. And then they all sat around and click-clack some more. And then someone hit enter and an email was sent. They said, we did it. Go back to the drawing board. And so we all went back to our little office they'd given us way up on the hill where we're cordoned off from the rest. And then they said, now you have something to work with. And I just opened it and it was just like an Excel spreadsheet. And I was like, okay, this is still nothing. Right. Like, what do? I have an Excel spreadsheet. How does that become a Mars rover? And that was the thing. Like, it was all just, And I could easily see those people in the X team being told they're doing something, click-clacking, handing that off to someone else and being like, see, and you helped. You definitely... Then that's how everything was so cordoned off. It was just... I started to be like, this isn't anything. And people were like... And not that I thought that it was fake at that point, but I was like, it doesn't seem like we're getting much done, and people get all mad.
Interesting. Yeah.
So then they took one of the guys that was with us, and last I saw him, he was on the after credits of a Big Bang Theory episode when they had a NASA thing.
Okay.
And then it was the last I saw of him.
Yeah.
And he was definitely the kind of guy who would have loved to be on the X team. So that's what NASA is. And I don't know how they pull it off to what extent, but that level of like cordoning off things and like having, and like if you like are there, it like it has a shiny exterior, but then when you dig down, there's just Excel spreadsheets and people beating on coffee tables while they scream about how the moon is so much different than Mars, which it really isn't, though. If what they say is to be believed, like the dirt is different, I guess.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's pretty much the same place.
Rocks and dirt and dust.
Right, which was I was like
a little bit.
I guess the
more
gravity would
yeah.
be different. Okay, so you got different gravity, but otherwise it's identical.
Yeah.
And that guy was like, and I just remember thinking that, but he like, it's completely different. I'm like, but it isn't though, right? Like they're both like rocks with no atmosphere that are dusty.
Yeah.
Like, and they're not even. I think the moon has 1/8 gravity allegedly, and Mars has 1/3 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not even that huge of a difference. Like, what are you talking about? And that was my first like, something is rotten in the state of Denmark here. And so after that, I started looking at it, and then someone red pilled me, and they showed me, they were like, hey, that they're just hanging on wires. And I said, that's stupid. And then they showed me that I was like, oh wait, they are hanging on wires, and that destroys your worldview again.
Yep.
And you have to rebuild from the ground up. But space is completely fake. Yeah, Elon Musk talking about Mars is not going to happen. And so, as someone brought up on Twitter recently, they said, listen, I don't understand why people, how can they're talking about terraforming Mars, we can't terraform Greenland. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, they're like, because they tell all these big things, like, Greenland is still inhospitable.
Let's terraform Nevada,
They can't do any of it.
Yeah.
Terraforming is not real.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Like, what? I guess if you live somewhere for a very, very long time, like thousands of years, and you had a bunch of, like, herd animals that were constantly pooping on the ground and revitalizing the soil, it might do something.
But they got to have something to
Maybe.
eat, You got to start... We got to, like, payload hay up to Mars every month or something?
Right. Mars will never happen. There will never be a Mars colony. Because A, I don't even know if you can go there, right? But B, if you could, the worst place on Earth is a utopia compared to Mars.
Yeah.
There's no air. That's a problem. Right? It's like minus 170 Celsius. It's like twice as cold as Antarctica.
Yeah.
And we can't get things to be in Antarctica.
Well, say we were to like pop a atmosphere into that place somehow by some magic hand waving. If the gravity is 1/3 of as it is on Earth, then your air pressure is going to be 1/3. Your atmospheric holding capacity of the planet is a lot lower, and so it's going to be like. I mean, can you even have a dense enough atmosphere to really sustain an ecosystem like the sort we would need to live in if you're dealing with 1/3 the gravity?
No,
I doubt it.
It's all stupid.
Yeah.
You have to build a big pod, big clear pod that has pressurized atmosphere in it. But we tried that on Earth and it didn't work.
Right.
We've tried biodomes on Earth and they do not work. Like the plants all fail. They've done this here, like outside of California, and it doesn't work. Yeah. It's not going to work on Mars. You would have to, and where are you going to get electricity? You're going to burn coal? There's no, you'd have to, we can barely have solar panels enough to run a toaster here. What are you going to do? None of this makes any sense. It's not possible. Yeah. And it's a pipe dream. They just feed people to make them believe, as Elon Musk recently tweeted, believe in the future. Yeah. Believe in the future. One day we're going to all be computer people. And your gender won't matter because you'll be a computer. And you can have computer sex in virtual reality with everybody from your Mars space station. It's going to be just like Star Trek, but more gay now. Because that's what you people want. And some of you will be furries. And that's all it is.
The whole having sex in virtual reality thing is such... Yeah. That is so preposterous. I cannot believe that anybody would believe that would be good or fun.
I know. You have to have your mind destroyed.
You do.
By believing all the lies.
You do. You can't have sex without physical bodies and stuff. I mean, give me a break. Who really wants to have virtual reality sex? That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well, a lot of people do because they are broken on every level. Man. They want to be like in Demolition Man where they have that helmet they hook up to each other. Remember that? Yes. And then he throws it off what is this? This is creepy. And they're like, well, touching each other causes germs. Which again is mostly a psyop. Viruses aren't alive. How do they mutate if it's not alive? It doesn't make sense, guys. None of it works. They can't. The virus doesn't have goals. It can't escape from a lab. That's like saying my toolbox escaped from the shed. It doesn't. They can't escape. They're inanimate. They're just inanimate objects. They don't. So that space is fake, and you're never gonna colonize it. You can't terraform Greenland. You can barely put an outpost in Antarctica and have it work. Yeah. And Antarctica has air and normal gravity and water and
penguins.
All the things and animals you could hunt. Yeah. And soil that at least if you warmed it up, something could grow in. Mm-hmm. And Mars has none of that in any capacity. As well as no protection from radiation. There's no way. It will not happen. This is as much a pipe dream as believing that Google, with its $1.5 billion, is going, which they recently announced, is going to solve immortality. Did you see it? No, they said we're going to solve death.
What?
Google they said they're throwing $1.5 billion at the, quote, mortality problem. Of death. And people were like, yeah, finally I can live to be bazillion. If only I didn't, if only I'd have more telomeres or something. And that's not gonna, it's not gonna happen. None of this it's all just a fake reality that gets you on a treadmill of not doing anything and believing things that aren't true that can ruin your life. And cause you to go into a path of where you're on the X team, click-clacking at a Excel spreadsheet thinking you're putting things on Mars. Which didn't happen. That guy's probably still there.
Just click-clacking away.
Click-clacking. Which is how divorce happened.
That's a good segue.
Segue, yes. Segue, yeah, well, I was going to bring this up because... today I was perusing
before we get into divorce. It was as you were telling your internship story about going to see the X Team. It was stunning to me how much your experience there was like an initiatory ritual, where you're in this group of neophytes. You've got a problem you can't solve. You're inadequate. You need to consult the keepers of the secret knowledge. So you're ushered through this great building and all these mysterious doors deep into the secret inner sanctum of the wise men, and then they bless you with, the secret knowledge, and then you go forth back into the profane world armed with this, new Gnostic power and all this stuff. The whole thing was ritualistic in sort of a sci-fi way. That's very interesting.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. Well, one, I would say my first thing would be, it was never as cool as as cool as it may have sounded, like the cool building and stuff. Mm-hmm. When I said it, imagine it 10 times less so. Okay, so here's what you should actually imagine.
Well, it was a low budget. It was a low budget Gnostic ritual initiation.
Well, what you should imagine in the heart of JPL is you drive up, and the entrance does look cool. It feels like you're going into the base of like the Stargate SG-1 base.
Okay.
Because there's that same little domed outpost barracks thing, and there are like military guards there with their big rifles, and then they scan you through, and you're like, now we're doing something. Mm-hmm. Like now we're inside something, right?
Yeah.
And then you get there, and the first thing is you should imagine everyone in ill-fitting business casual attire. And then everyone wearing at least a minimum of 7 lanyards that dangle from their necks all the time, like jangly plastic jewelry.
Yeah.
And they walk around, and they're all just walking around all day, pulling on these extension cables from their lanyards and buzzing their badge onto doors that beep. Beep, and they open. They go beep, and then it opens. And they do that for about 4 hours in the morning, and then they all go to lunch. And they go to the cafeteria, right? And here's the weird part. And as you go to the cafeteria, there will be like 4 of them still wearing their lanyards, but who have removed their shoes, and they are standing sort of off to the side on what amounts to a pine mulch lawn.
Okay.
Doing Tai Chi. Right? They're just slowly moving and doing Tai Chi, right? They're just very slow, like the very, very slow Tai Chi movements.
Our tax money at work.
Right. And then you go into the lunch counter, and they're all trying to decide which brand of intolerant they are to food. Mm-hmm. There'll be like a line that's no nuts, a line that's no gluten, a line that's no meat, a line that's no vegetables or whatever. And they all go through their separate lines, and they get them on these trays that are the same trays you got in elementary school. Exact same. And they sit down in a big room, and on the walls are like inspirational posters of like Carl Sagan. Like, no joke. Or Neil deGrasse Tyson. And there's like a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson with his face in front of like a galaxy, and it'll say like, shoot for the stars, shoot for the moon, and at least you'll land among stars.
Yeah. Or
something like that. And then there's a bunch of deer there for some reason, and raccoons.
Okay.
I don't know why. It's supposedly fenced off. I guess the deer are stuck in the fence. But the deer have no problem just coming up to the lunch table and mogging the scientists for their food. Like the scientists will be eating there, and the deer will walk up and just take a piece of lettuce, and the scientist is like, "Rrr!" And the deer just chews it in front of them and then takes another piece. Like, it's very weird. It's like a Disney movie, how close they are with those deer.
Yeah.
And if you work overtime, you stay at night, you'll find that everything that you leave outside is stolen by a raccoon. And that is what JPL is.
Oh, man. This sounds like It reminds me of an aircraft carrier. I got to tour an aircraft carrier
it's
underway.
as dumb and gay as an aircraft carrier.
And it was just a whole bunch of people. I mean, like, missiles and airplanes are cool, right? Riding the aircraft elevator was awesome. But when you're walking around the bowels of this thing, it is like a bunch of people just going to meetings and scanning badges. And
that's all they do. They walk around going beep.
And like beep. There's a lot of
what
gossip.
What are we doing here? And no one can tell you.
Right.
It's just like on the aircraft carrier. Like, well, we're just sailing over there.
Yeah.
Why? Just cause.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then and then they're like, oh, and then we got the we got the nuclear weapons. Like, do you? Do you though? Or is this another X team pretending that they're going to space?
Yeah.
And I think that is what it is. I don't, I'm on the nuclear sub. Are you though? I know the nuclear sub means like nuclear powered, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's what, as cool as it may have sounded, imagine it less so.
Okay.
And then we went to the other facility called Goldstone, I think, which is in the middle of Death Valley. It's so hot. And it's the same, except lamer.
The deer are replaced with scorpions.
Yeah, everyone there is 7 times as fat. Because instead of it being on the side of a hill where they have to walk up and down for lunch, it's on a flat plain. And they all just morph into the shape of the surrounding rocks over time. So that's what NASA is. If you've ever been in NASA, it's just the lanyards, and it's just it's not. And I think that's why I had trouble being there, really. Because after that, I stopped my pursuit of, because I wanted to be like a space person. But then I realized, I can't sit in this dingy room click-clacking all day.
Right.
Right? That's not going to work for me. And then I went back to my university, and I reported that to the professor that sent me there. Because we were allegedly also doing another fake space thing that also never happened. We were doing like a student satellite, like a cube satellite, and it never occurred, because they never do. Nothing of it ever works. It all is just people playing around. And, like, seriously, I got, because through my university thing, I was on like 3 or 4, what on paper seemed like big things that were like funded, and stuff.
Yeah.
And nothing ever happened. We just sat around. I remember I did the same thing in my graduate degree. I was given this thing called like JAUNT 4. And which I've talked about before, in MCMP 5, where I was supposed to calculate, which MCMP means Monte Carlo in particle simulation, MCMP number 5.
Okay.
And you go through there, and you like, this is where the t-shirt Bad Trouble that we never made comes through.
Yep.
And you would click clack at it, and you would to design some new radiation detector or whatever we had funding for. And you would click, clack, and you make all these models, and you would give them to whoever was funding the thing, and they would say, interesting, what if it did this? And you go back and you click, clack some more. And you do that for several years, and then he would die, and then that would be it. And that's all that ever happened. Because he was an old man who'd just been not producing anything his whole life.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, but he was covered in books. He always had a book about, in the 80s we did this simulation too. And he'd pull it out and he'd say, see if you can match it. And so I would go on my computer and try to reproduce the same thing that he had done in the 80s, which also didn't produce anything. And so it was just this circle of nonsense.
Yeah. But it's funded, though. It was funded. So.
Oh, it was crazy funded. Most of my graduate school tuition was paid for that way. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened. Nothing was made. When I left, I handed all of the data and all the things I've been working on to another younger student who was coming up. And I checked with him a couple years later, and he was at the same spot I was. Doing nothing had happened. He had the same thing. He click clack some more, and there's probably another guy there now click clacking. And that's all. It's just been handed. It was handed to me by someone that had click-clacked, and it was funded the whole time. And people just click-clack the money away. I don't know, but it's all these promises. It's like, oh, in the future it's going to be this, and nothing ever happens. So I don't know. I'm pretty down on the whole upper science establishment.
I gathered.
It's not my fault though. That's how it really is.
Yeah.
That's how it really is. There's no one in space. It's just it's something made up by Walt Disney. Cuz Von Braun has on his tombstone the verse from the Bible, which says that the sky is a firmament.
Oh.
You ever thought about it? Says the firmament declares or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like that one verse. And he's like, you little scamp.
He's got some cheek, doesn't he?
Yeah. So, it's not real. There's no one in space. No one has ever been to space. I don't know if you can go to space. Also, this is one I don't believe, but I have thought about it before. What? Are those rockets really rockets?
What else would they be?
Well, okay, you think about it. All the rockets you've seen, like when you buy like a rocket kit as a kid and you make a rocket.
Yeah.
What does it do when it launches?
Goes up.
Goes up real fast.
Yeah.
Right? And like that seems to be what rockets do actually, is they go real fast. But these rockets that we allegedly put stuff on go real slow. They go and they just sort of gently take off and then accelerate a little bit. Well, when they say like, oh, they're going a bajillion miles an hour now.
Right.
But you look at them in the sky and you're like, but I still see it. It doesn't look like it's going that fast. But they're like, oh, it's so fast.
I don't know. I don't have a big problem with that. I think rocket technology generally is pretty legit. I mean there's a lot more mass, so the acceleration curve is going to be longer, right? I mean, just because there's so much more mass.
I understand it. And like I said, this is not something I believe. I agree with you.
Okay.
But I think that you're correct. And I think that is what's happening. But there's a small part of me that goes, is that just a giant hot air balloon? And the burner's on the bottom. Like, because that's what it is. Like, it's the same thing. It's like, it makes the same sound, and then it rises slowly in the same sort of way. And then it just goes up, and it's not going a bazillion miles an hour like they seem to say, or at least it doesn't appear. And so a small part of me goes, is this just hiding in plain sight again? Because, NASA is the number one consumer in the world of helium.
Interesting.
So, I don't think that's true. But people say that they're like balloons and stuff. I don't think that's true. I think that they actually have rockets that can go slow. I think SpaceX can probably land its rocket again, like they said.
And they have throttle control that a model rocket doesn't have,
That's true, but at the same time, is it a hot air balloon?
I don't think so.
But is it though? Right? It's because it would be if you had a giant. How would it look different? Here's the thing: if you had a hot air balloon that large, what would the burner look like that would be different than that? Because the burner on a hot air balloon is very big already.
Yeah, but a rocket thruster is pointed down at the ground. I mean, wouldn't it?
I mean, you could do it it could go up there a little bit and just have the fire coming out, maybe.
I don't know.
It might work. I'm just saying. Like I said, I don't think that that's what's happening. I think it's actually a rocket like you think. But I have been punked before.
Yeah.
And I know how the magician puts the Oreo in his mouth after the napkin.
You're just questioning everything now.
Well, I just know I walked into the room and there was a space Team X who got mad at me because the Mars is so much different than the moon when it isn't.
Yeah.
And all he had was an Excel spreadsheet. And he felt like he was high and mighty.
Yeah.
And so I just am like, I don't know. Everything I look at a little bit. Because they do hang on the wires. Like, that's the thing.
Right.
Like, you look at them and, like, they're not an International Space Station. So then you would say, well, what's that rocket doing? I don't know. Is it just going up and falling in the ocean later? Or is it something else? And this is why people get mad at you. They're like, well, if viruses don't work like that, then what is happening? It's like, I don't know exactly. Mm-hmm. But I can just show you logically that it doesn't work. It can't work the way it's being. I don't have what is happening. I just know what can't be happening.
I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with virus theory generally.
I know. You're still in that world.
Yeah, well.
Where how can they be? They're not alive though.
Yeah, but it's a complicated mousetrap.
What is?
The virus particle itself is a little mousetrap. And when it gets triggered, it does its little mechanism. And then the cell makes new ones, and then they go out and do their little single action.
But how would it be a mousetrap?
I don't know.
Is it? Like, how is it, like, if it's not alive, how's it, like, attaching to the cell and poking into it and then injecting its DNA into it?
I mean, some of that you could explain by different chemical affinities. I mean, if two things with different charges and affinities for each other come in contact, they will attach to one another by, any of several different chemical actions.
Maybe.
Now,
but
the
all
bit
this language
about
of, like, mutation and stuff, and the virus is evolving. It's like, well, that's all language you use of, like, living things,
right?
Like,
well, I think they would say that when
the
the cell copies the thing, there can be interference from other genetic material present in the environment, or there can be replication errors due to chemical conditions that are not ideal for the process, that sort of thing. I guess.
I don't if AIDS worked the way they said, everyone in the world would have AIDS.
Right. Well, see, they run into problems when they get into specific diseases and how they're described, because I think that's where most of the deception occurs. It's not the fundamental theory in its basics is, I feel, tenable. But then when they take it and then they say, oh, this particular virus does all these things and you're all going to die, that's where the principal deceptions are lying, is when they start getting into the specifics.
Maybe. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
In the future, it will all be made clear.
Yes, I'm sure.
everything will be just like if we go to war with Russia. This is great. I hope that we do, just so that I can be tested on my nuclear bomb hypothesis.
Yeah.
Like,
I was thinking about that.
I would love it, because if the bombs go off, then I will come on the show in the fallout of the show when all of our listeners are dead. Mm-hmm. And I will say, you know what? It turns out I was wrong about nuclear bombs. We're all dead now.
Yeah.
And that'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But if we go to conflict with Russia and no nuclear bombs are fired, then I'll go, yeah, see, seems like that could have happened. And people will go, wow, we were just all too irresponsible to use nuclear bomb. No one wants to go push that button, the red button, and that's all they make excuses for why it didn't happen again, which is what I think is the most likely scenario, and continue to believe it. And say, well, we didn't go all the way this time, but next time, we're really going to the moon, see? Mm-hmm. In 5 years, the next war, we're really going to blow everything up.
I do think that's
what I think would happen.
Nuclear weapons, the story about nuclear weapons is less tenable than the story about viruses. Just, if we're going to rank things.
Okay. So I would like to see, and I would like to... because time will make everything clear. I think that's why they're trying to wrap up society, because the lies have gotten so big. They either have to put up or shut up at some point. You can't have a world loaded to the teeth with nuclear bombs and have them never go off.
Well, I think maybe the problem with that might not be that nuclear bombs are fake, although they may be fake, I will grant. I think it's possible that the fakeness is actually that the wars are fake.
Oh, well, that's true too.
And so if the wars aren't real, there's not really a risk of there ever being nuclear annihilation, because the wars aren't real. I mean, they're real, like people are going and fighting, but it's stage managed where people actually die. But at the top level, there's not everybody's in agreement how far this is going to go and what we're going to do and what we're not going to do, and that's what I mean in saying the wars are fake. They're not like produced in a theater set or something.
Right. Well, if nuclear bombs are real, then either they're fake or no country on Earth since the bomb has cared at all if its citizenry get annihilated.
Interesting.
Because there are simple things you could do to like mitigate. Like you could make a law where residential homes had to be made of concrete.
Yeah.
Or something.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of vast villages of stick houses that will fall over and burst into flame instantaneously in a nuclear blast.
I mean, we couldn't afford to house everybody if everybody had to be housed that way. And it's just not enough.
Concrete isn't expensive.
It's more expensive than building with stick frame.
A little bit, but you could just, if you thought that nuclear bombs were a threat,
mm-hmm.
and it seems like it would be worth the expense. You could subsidize it or something.
Yeah, or at least a shelter, in every home.
Yeah, if people made houses out of concrete regularly, though, it would become cheaper.
Now, we did have the civil defense program during the Cold War where there were bunkers everywhere, and that were you would know where your bunker is and where you should go if there's fallout.
Right. And that was the thing that were people, but then no one really followed through on it. And so if it's either that they're fake or no one has taken, because no one anywhere has taken any precautions against them at all.
Yeah.
None.
We're kind of toast. If they're real and somebody uses them, there's not much we can do if the missile defense system doesn't work.
But not even just us. China hasn't taken anything. Like China's cities are in no better shape for a nuclear.
Yeah.
Russia hasn't done any. No one's done anything to prepare for this allegedly world-ending thing that could be mitigated largely through some simple different construction methods.
Mm-hmm.
No one's done anything.
That's a good point.
You go, well, I don't know. Is this even It's like if there's a meteor coming and you can do something about it, then why wouldn't you? Or is the meteor not coming?
Right. Yeah.
It's like every 2 years they say a meteor came this close. Look, this close. It was within like our solar backyard.
Well, the Federation of Nuclear Scientists or whatever they're called is saying that doomsday is right around the corner now. So any minute. Any minute now.
The meteor is going to hit us. Any minute. And you could just say, hey, guys, how many people have you known that have been killed by a meteor? 0. How many people you know have been killed by a nuclear bomb? 0.
Yeah.
How many people you know that have been to Mars? 0. And this is all, it's all nothing. Nothing, none of it's true in any capacity. But this is the same thing as why, this is divorcism. It's all just divorcism. Okay.
Good segue again.
Which is like racism.
Yeah.
In 1994, Constance Aarons.
Mm-hmm.
Heard of this woman?
No.
She was an academic who was in the 80s and 90s. There were a few women in the 80s and 90s. Justin Murphy wrote a great article about this. This is where I'm getting this from today.
Okay.
Who really led the charge for normalizing divorce.
Yeah.
Because if you grew up in like the 50s and 60s and 70s, finding a having friends of divorced parents was very rare.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't happen very much. Like you might know one kid in school and it was like, oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
But now it's like there's so many in school who are like that. And that was because people, it's the same story they always have. People like Constance, who was an academic, right? This is why you periodically, and I'm not saying to do it, but this is why periodically in history people hang academics. Because they do this sort of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And then people get tired of it. And I'm not saying you should go hang academics, but I'm just explaining why it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies like Constance Aarons. First of all, never trust a woman named Constance.
I don't know. Constance Cumby is pretty based.
She published a book called The Good Divorce in 1994.
Oh no!
And in her book, which is the standard left-wing playbook of destroy everything.
Yeah.
She said, divorce is only a problem because, quote, society stigmatizes it.
Oh.
Which is what they say about everything. Like, this isn't a problem. It's just a problem because you think it is. It's like Shakespeare. There is no wrong or right, but thinking makes it so, as he said in one of his plays. I think if I remember correct, he put that in the mouth of one of the bad guys. I don't know. But I'm just, that's the standard. It's like, well, if you were just okay with it, it wouldn't be a problem. She said, look, if you have a family with divorced parents and you call it a broken family, that's divorcist. It's a form, you're committing a divorcism, which is like racism. Instead, you should call it binuclear.
Binuclear.
You call it binuclear. And calling someone an ex, well, that sounds bad. That sounds like they were canceled. Instead, should call them fuzzy parents. That's what she said.
What?
Like, instead of a stepdad, have a fuzzy dad. Like, he's not quite your dad,
right.
You know? But he's a fuzzy dad.
Okay.
He's a fuzzy dad. And she was on Oprah and Good Morning America. And it was this whole thing of like, it's harder on the women than it is on the men, and that's because of the patriarchy. And really, though, it's fine. It doesn't actually hurt anybody. It's just another moral neutral choice that you can make. Right?
Yeah.
And that's why I sung that, because I was trying to figure out, like, because I've known some people recently going through divorces. One of them is having poltergeist activity, which is to be expected in times of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to figure out, like, why does this continue? What is it about, what is wrong? And I thought you would have good thoughts on this, because this is sort of up your alley of, like, social dysfunction.
Yeah.
Analysis. Like, what is it about the modern lifestyle? Is it just our ideas about life and, like, our expectations about, like, what a marriage should be? Or is it economics? Or is it, like, what is going on where people just divorce so much now? And they think, like, I guess what bothers me is the perception that there's really nothing bad that happens of it. Or what people say is like, well, it's better if they do.
Right.
If they're, because people will point to, like, if you say, like, I don't know, it's probably bad for the kids, and they'll go, well, what if they were in an abusive family?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because this is the playbook. You use the extreme to justify the not extreme.
Yeah, it's
like,
they do that with abortion too. Yeah.
I guess if there was a dad that was hitting them with a katana, then they probably are better off if he's not there.
Right.
Right? But that's not almost all the cases that we're talking about here.
No, usually people get divorced because they're selfish. You know? That's...
Yeah. And so, like, this is the playbook of one, stigmatize the response to the thing instead of the thing itself.
Yeah.
Like, your response is the problem, not the thing.
Uh-huh.
And then two, use the extreme example to justify normalizing it as a normal course of action.
Right.
That's the two. They use that all the time.
Yep.
And people continue to fall for it over and over again, just like they continue to fall for the stupid space stuff.
The same playbook for divorce has been for abortion, for gay marriage, for all the crazy critical race theory stuff being taught in school. Like they really do use that little playbook for everything.
It's the same playbook, and it's like the magician again. Once you see through it, you're like, oh, goodness, why doesn't anyone else see that he's just putting a cookie in his mouth with a napkin? And they don't, but people don't. I guess they don't want to see it, but it's the same playbook over and over again. Yeah. But that little song, which is again by Jonathan Colton, which I play a lot of, if people haven't realized I'm a fan of his. Or at least I was before he disappeared into NPR for like 11 years. Well, he did. He wrote songs for a while, and then he just faded away. And I found out he was like the magician, not the magician, the musician on like the background musician of like the rest of the story or whatever.
Oh, that's funny.
Which I guess is a cushy gig.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, that's a great gig if you can get it. But I was like, oh, that's what happened to him, and he was gone for forever now. He hasn't wrote a new song in ages. But that's the fate of all musicians is to produce a brief period of production and then either fade away or become Bob Dylan, where you just get annoying and continue to try to force your new songs on people that aren't good. Because you want to recapture the magic of that 5 years you had a good run.
Ouch.
That's the two paths, and he chose the more honorable path of just fading into obscurity.
Okay.
So I respect him, but I thought his song had a lot of like, it hit on points of like what happens in marriages. Like, if you need me, I'll be downstairs with the shop vac. You can call, but I probably won't hear you, so I'll with the shop vac on. But you'll be okay, because you'll be upstairs with the TV. You can cry and I probably won't hear you, because it's loud with the shop vac on. How many relationships have that sort of dynamic happening?
I think
probably a good many.
Yeah, a lot.
And so why is that? Like, why are men in our age like have a tendency to like retreat into like a man cave in a basement while the women are upstairs being sad? Like, what's going? Is it just because is it because this life that they're building is empty? Because that's like the thing, like in The Bridge, he's mocking the conversations people have.
Yeah.
In like middle class suburbia, which should be mocked because they're stupid. And he says, I like the Starbucks here. It's better than the other one because the other one's not as good. They really need to put a light here because it's hard to turn. It's hard to make a left turn.
Yeah.
And that's like the level of conversation you get out of people. It's either that or it's like TikToks or something now. And TikToks are the most vapid thing I've ever seen.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah.
I don't understand how anyone, it's like they just are on there like, boop, 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 boop. I like flowers, and if you choose this flower, this is what I think about you. And it's like, oh my, but that's the level of discourse people have. Like, people can't, there's nothing underneath. It's so shallow. Mm-hmm. Right? And is that the problem? Is that the life people are building is so shallow that there's no way to connect to each other?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the problem. I think you have to ask the question, why is it so shallow? Because I think that people are getting married oftentimes because they feel their life does feel empty and meaningless. And they think that having a significant other or not being alone is going to bring meaning to their life. And starting a family can bring meaning to your life, but your purpose has to be, it cannot be an inward focused purpose. But we could talk about that in a second. But I think the expectation that getting married is going to, or just having some sort of a relationship period, is going to bring a meaning and a purpose to your life that isn't there. That's an unmeetable expectation to put on your partner or your spouse. They can't bring, if your life has no purpose, your getting married can't bring a purpose. I think rather two people need to get married because they have compatible purposes in their lives and they want to join those into one purpose and work on it together. But you have to start with a purpose. Like
and I guess most people don't have, like, most people's purpose is to like go to a coffee shop after work and be trendy and be in a TikTok video.
Yeah, well, consumerism is what we've created to fill up the lack of purpose in modern Western life. And so you get an identity and you get activity, you get goals and desires, all that can come to you in this like cheap version through the consumerist lifestyle. And that's, most people can't even at this point conceive of anything outside of that as far as finding a purpose in their life. If you're just like this atheist modernist living in the big city, like that's all there is to do is to consume. You know, when you hear people talk about how great it is to live in the big city, I know I'm harping on city life again. Right. The answers they always give you is just consuming. It's consumerism, wrapped up in different, you know, multicultural things and whatever experiences, and it's just consume because you can't really create anything.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's like talking about the work product of a typical NASA person is just clacking on a spreadsheet all the time. And if they were to show you their work product, it would be, oh, you know, I'm doing all this gravity modeling, or well, I don't know, whatever. It's hard for people that are locked into these huge, outsized, human organizational structures that are modern life, whether it be bureaucracies or cities or giant corporations or whatever. Your tasks are so narrow that it's very difficult to find some sort of a compelling purpose there. But that this level of human organization has to be going on at this scale because it's so profitable for certain persons, and there's so much power to be gained from it at certain levels that you know, you have to give people some sort of the little people, the normal people, have to be given some sort of purpose that can't be found in a real way, so they're given consumerism. And so we're consumeristic as a people because the organization of our society has stripped away any sense of real purpose from most people's lived experience.
Is that inevitable if a society gets so large, you just become a cog in the machine? Or is there...
yeah.
Is there a way like...
It's centralization, I think, is the thing. So you can have... It doesn't matter how many people you have in America, right? But when... organizational when the mode of organization is just how many people can we connect into this singular point, and everything, the way you design your cities and the way you organize your public administrations and all this stuff are outsized to the point of containing millions of people. Yeah, it does. But you know, but the motive for the people doing this at the top is the power and the money. But there's really no benefit to the people living under it to being complex so in such a huge number into a single node. If you go and read what's that guy's name? He wrote Pattern Language. Alexander, I think is his name. I'll link it in the show notes. But it's a book about city design and theories about human scale living and all that, architecture and all that sort of thing. But he and his cohorts sort of concluded that the ideal scale for human beings to live in a single node is probably around 7,000, 8,000 people. Because you can go out and you can actually see people you know and have relationships and you know, you can work with people and then see them, you know, at the bowling alley and their family's there and your family's there and things that can't happen organically. So in a huge city, and so therefore like substitutions has to be made for that. And so then you have like bring your whole self to work, where you don't just go to work, you're there to like share all your feelings and have like and everybody's at work on the team supposed to go to the bar together and hang out. And so it's like, yeah, you can do those things and you can find relationships and friendships there, but you're not going to be, if you've got a family back home, you're not going to be spending any time with them because you're bringing your whole self to work. And so there's all these unsolvable problems when you scale up that way. And I think that's part of the divorce problem, is because when you're living in the node that big and you're having to participate in the way it functions, it consumes your life and you don't have any personal life or purpose beyond that.
Yeah, I remember, well, two things. One, I don't know if our listeners could have guessed this, But that sort of corporate environment that you described, I've never fit into at all.
I can believe that.
Like when they were like, we're going to go do this or whatever, is like, yeah, no, though.
Right.
Like, we're not going to, like, share feelings here.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like, it's not, or like, we're going to go to the thing after you come in and like, no. Nope. Not going.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, or we're going to go on the corporate retreat or nope.
Oh, man. I hate that stuff.
You know, like, I never have any sort of corporate thing, which is why I have trouble in, like, because so much of life these days is like organized around big corporations, and I am the opposite personality of that.
Me too.
But I remember what you described. It was actually on the airplane back from my internship, because I drove out there, but then I took an airplane back. And I remember this. It was sort of synchronistic that you brought it up. This, like, bring your whole self to work. I was sitting behind a guy who was talking with this girl, because the internship was obviously in California. And they were talking about, like, you know, life and whatever. And they were just, you know, sitting next to each other, chit-chatting before the plane started. And he had just started a job at, like, Google. And he was going back home to see his family or whatever. And he was describing it. And he would say stuff, and he was so enthusiastic about it. And he was like, and they have a rock wall. And, like, we get, like, food there on the campus. And they really make it so, like, you never want to go home. And I was just sitting there going, that sounds like hell. Yeah. And this guy in front of me is so excited about it. And that was the sort of the moment I realized, oh, okay, I can't do things like normal people because I don't understand the appeal of that at all. Like, I would want to become a campus shooter. Like, the only reason, like, why are there not more Google, like the lady that shot up YouTube was the only response to YouTube campus that is possible.
We do not endorse violence on this show.
We don't endorse violence, but I defend her. Right? Because what would you if you work in such a place that has a rock wall or a ping pong table and you don't want to murder everybody there, what's wrong with you?
Well, the buy-in is you have to buy in with your whole life. The big tech corporations are really taking this stuff to a whole new level where there's no reason to ever leave campus. That you're married to the corporation. Like, how can you work there and even have a family if the cultural buy-in is so huge that the company is your family? And it's like, well, you know, you hear about the rate of divorce in active duty military people because they're going overseas all the time. They're not there. That, like, the family needs the people in the family to be present. You can't if you're not there, you can't have a family. I mean, it's just there's no way around it. And so
is it the normalization of people working outside the home, both like men and women?
I think that's part of it.
Back in the day, people sort of like worked by their house.
Well, you know, at an age when cities were built at a humane scale, you know, a man could go and work in a shop or whatever, an office, and then go home.
His shop might be in the bottom of his house.
Right. A lot of people, exactly. That sort of thing was a lot more common than it is now, and there's more sole proprietorships and family businesses, and people would work with their children, would help them at work and stuff. And you know, I'll tell you, just as an aside, at certain seasons in my professional life, I've had times where I could bring my kids to work with me and they could actually help me work because of certain things we were doing, and they could operate small machinery and see how it all worked. It was very cool. And I got this glimpse of what it was like to be able to take your son with you and really teach him how to do the thing that you do. And the bite I got of it was just like a little morsel. I just got a little sample of what it was like.
This is the PSYOP against child labor.
Yeah.
Like to people like child labor, it's the worst thing. Like no, like kids working with their parents.
Yeah.
Is like the number one way they used to bond.
Yeah.
And how you teach them how to be responsible adults.
And like if
yes,
you've got
putting a kid in a Nike factory is bad. I
agree. Yeah.
But like
that's not what we're talking about.
The same thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but you can't do that anymore because everything's at such an inhumane scale. I mean, I wonder how many of our listeners, maybe one of them, could actually bring their kid to work with them and let them help in some capacity that wouldn't just be super bored. But now, if you take your kid to work with you, and some companies actually are trying to encourage this, but the kid comes to work and they just sit there while their dad click-clacks on a computer.
Yeah, just click-clack.
And that's reflecting of a bigger...
click-clacking isn't accomplishing anything for anybody.
And this is a huge problem for our society, and it's destructive, but it's not... It's outside the Overton window to really even discuss this in terms of policy and the way we make decisions and the sort of corporations that we're building or supporting, because there's just so much money to be made. If you take a human being and you turn him into like this little cog in a machine, or this, and his whole life revolves around it, the human person is capable of producing so much if you enslave him that way. Mm-hmm. And so it's not even permissible to like have to ask these questions in where it would matter to ask them, because so much money would be lost, so much power would be given up by the people that have money and have power. But getting back, just reconnecting that to the marriage and family is an organic mode of living. We live in an inorganic society. Mm-hmm. Our society is wholly inorganic in its construction, in its right down to its root level. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to us that people that try to do marriage and family are failing at a spectacular rate.
Yeah, well, people bring up the economic issue because in America, say, the poorer you are, the more likely you are to either get divorced or never be married at all.
Right. Yeah.
But that can't be the whole story, because globally, the poorer the country, the more stable the long-term relationships are. Like Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and Guatemala have the lowest divorce rates in the world, and they're very poor.
Yeah.
So it's not poverty per se. Right? Mm-hmm. It's something else that is manifested more here in the poor populations, I guess. But what is that something else? Like, why can you be dirt poor in Guatemala and your relationship, you will have a lifelong marriage, but you need like $250,000 a year to have a chance in America?
Well, if you're poor in rural Central America, mm-hmm. Unless you're like leaving to do a turn in a factory, or you're going to America for a while to make money and send it home, if you're just there, you've got lots of time to spend with your family, because you're probably in some sort of agricultural capacity or something adjacent to agriculture, and so that you can, and your kids and your family can work together, because agriculture is something a family can do together.
Right.
In the American city, the Western mega city, if you're poor, you're probably working as some sort of delivery driver, or you're working in a restaurant or some sort of factory, and there is no agriculture. So agriculture is sort of like the family's safety net at the lower end of the economic spectrum. Okay. It's that's an occupation that a family can thrive under, even if they're poor. The relationships can thrive, but there is no agriculture in the city. You can't, if you're driving for Amazon, you can't take your kids with you, right? They have to go to a daycare, and Amazon will provide you daycare or whatever. And then by the time you're done with your mega shift, like packing boxes at the Amazon distribution center, you're too tired to really do a whole lot with your kids. And they're worn out. Yeah, they're worn out from being at school and daycare and all that stuff.
Right, you can't expect people to like put in a full day and then come home and then put in a full day of relationship energy.
No, yeah.
People just don't have that much energy.
Yeah, especially the hours that Americans work now. If your work day is 8 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m., you're out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like I work from home.
Yeah.
Like I don't even have a commute. I work from home, but my work hours can get kind of long. And even just that, I'm not there for my kids during the week anywhere close to where I want to be.
Right.
You know,
right.
Because I'm plugged into modern living too, not as much as some others. I do have in my personal life some advantages that others don't have as far as being able to be a part of my family life. But it's still hard, and I've got it easier than many. But we're living at a scale, like we as in Western society are living at a scale for the most part that's completely hostile to any sort of functional family relationship. And I think that's another huge problem. Besides, I think we talked a little bit about expectations, the expectations you have for a relationship going out. That's a huge problem, and I think most people get their expectations from media that they've consumed. Again, back to consumerism. You know, if consuming media and ideas, fantasy sells, right? If you're trying to be like, go ahead.
Oh, this is where people get I call this the Betty Crocker gay.
Okay.
Because like on media, on TV, the gay couple is always like, hello, bake some cookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that isn't how gay people actually are if you know them.
Right.
And I don't hate gay people, but the idea that two dudes are going to form like this Betty Crocker relationship just doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
It just doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't mean that they're like bad, horrible people to be around or whatever. People are like, I'm just saying that like that image that's created is a purely media fiction.
Yeah, it's a sales pitch so that we don't object to it being a part of our life. Yeah.
Because people think like you object to gay marriage, and then people are like, in their head, you're objecting to the happy fat man on Modern Family.
Right.
Who's a wonderful dad and who is like all the, but then you're like, okay, but that is a TV show though.
Right. It's not real.
See. And that's what people get their expectations of, like you said, with marriage in that way from the media.
Yeah.
And again, it's everything's so fake. I know I keep coming back to that thing. But if you get things through a screen, it's not real. It's just not real.
Yeah.
And everything people believe now comes through a screen, you know?
Yeah.
So, but here's another question. Why then is most of the time, I think it's 70% of the time, the woman is the one that actually files for divorce? Like she's the one that initiates the divorce in a legal sense anyway.
I think women are more susceptible to fantasy views of what a marriage should be and what it should be like, and and therefore are more likely to have the crushing realization that expectations are not met and will never be met. So if you know, because women read fantasy novels and men don't, like romance fantasy novels, and there's a reason, because our appetites and our aptitudes are different. Right. And those novels are just porn for women. So, you know, if men want porn, they just look at porn. If women want porn, they don't typically they don't consume those things. They consume like fantasy romance novels.
Something with Fabio on the cover, shirtless.
Right. Or something to that effect. Or there's like a more kind of banal version of it in like Hallmark movies and stuff. But if you're looking for women, if you're looking for a man to finally realize that you're a special, beautiful princess and just gonna treat you like a princess every day, and every day is just going to be this incredible romance. It's not going to happen. And in fact, if you watch these shows, especially like long-running serial TV shows, if there's a guy like that does that for his girl, he has to die. They always kill him because the story doesn't, you can't just have that forever. It never happens. And if somebody did do that, it would get weird and they would be driven insane. Somebody would go crazy. So they always have to kill Mr. Perfect. In like,
you
what was that show?
You can't have the honeymoon phase forever. It just doesn't work.
Can't. There has to be
super into you. Yeah, your whole life. You can't go on forever.
Like fairy tale romance isn't a purpose. Yeah, he has to die because there's no purpose.
Right.
Like they built up this whole fairy tale romance thing and it's finally consummated and they're so happy. And then he immediately has to die because that's not a purpose.
Right.
There's no
and also
deeper
that sort of
meaning to
women's fantasy is to be the last object of desire of somebody.
Right. And so when it's all
that's
about
the woman's serial killer motive.
Yeah,
and he'll never love anyone else.
Right.
And then they stab
but
him
it's
to
like
death.
when the marriage, when your idea of what the marriage is going to be is so wrapped around your validation of your self-worth, that'll never work because it will never live up to the demands that you've placed upon it. Because that's not validating your self-worth is not the point of marriage and relationships. You have to get that. You have to get that from somewhere else.
Should we write romance novels that give women more realistic expectations? And
they wouldn't sell. Like, talk about you think the moon is fake, can't make money. That really wouldn't make money.
Yeah, I mean, I know it wouldn't make money.
Yeah,
but maybe we could write it, and it would be like, I don't know.
Well, I think Fabio. Is. But the only people that would consume it would be the people that understand that. Like, so if you were to write a novel about a family, building moving out of the city and building a farm together and doing all that stuff, like Little House on the Prairie. Okay, did you ever read those books? They're just fantastic. Okay, and it's funny because young people today, except for like homeschoolers and stuff, they don't read those books because it's totally not. It's not at all about validating your self-worth and finding a purpose in your life and relationships. It's about a family who love each other, that have purpose. They're working, they're suffering together, and their relationships are tested, and the whole purpose for their being together is not selfish. Right? But we can't write, we're such a depraved people, we can't even write fiction like that anymore for the most part. So you got to read something that was written a long time ago, because none of everything about modern fiction is about validating my self-worth or suffering alienation. That's it. It's all rooted in that.
This is why I've long advocated the reintroduction of wolves into American suburbs.
If you're fighting the wolves, that's going to give you some clear purpose.
If when you walk outside, there is a non-zero chance that you will be eaten.
Yeah.
A lot of these modern problems go away.
Yeah.
Very instantaneously. Like, if your baby's playing on the backyard and like 1 in 1,000 babies get snatched by a wolf and carried away, that's awful. But also, it has some benefits, right? Because then you're not worried about stupid stuff like your spreadsheet. Then you're worried about real things. Right?
I think the point the point you're touching on is we've been separated from risk, right?
We've been separated from risk. Did you ever listen to Carl Pilkington?
No.
He was that guy on An Idiot Abroad. But he had this great line one time. Because the whole premise of him was he's a low IQ guy that was so low IQ. He was like that meme. He was so low IQ, his takes were genius. Yeah. Right? That's what it was. And so he was sitting there and goes, you got a worry hole. Because he's British, I can't do it. And the guy, it was Ricky Gervais was the host of the show. He would send him off on these things,
Uh-huh.
And then Carl Pilkington would explain what he was doing. And Ricky was like, what? He's like, yeah, you have to, mate, you got a worry hole in your head. It has to be filled with something. So if you don't got anything big, you'll worry about all the small stuff.
That's true.
And I was like, that's true.
Absolutely.
So people need a real worry, so their worry hole is filled with something that is they can do something about, like a wolf, and you could take precautions. You can't. The thing about like COVID and stuff is you're fighting an invisible thing, and so there's all these. You can just hamster wheel the worry forever.
Yeah,
because it's never can be known if you did enough or if you're doing the right thing. Whereas, like, if there's a wolf outside that may eat you, then you have a pretty clear idea of, like, what needs to happen. And so we have to have... Danger has to come back for people to be more... It's like the biodome, which didn't work, to bring it back. The reason the biodome didn't work because there were never any storms inside the biodome. There was no wind. And so the trees never had stress. They never got tree exercise of being swayed back and forth and having to build fibers that held themselves strong. And when they did that, when they got without that stress, when they got to a certain height, they weren't strong enough to hold their own weight and they all fell over.
Yeah.
Which is what happened in the biodome. So if you grow a tree without wind outside, it just falls over.
That's a great analogy, man.
And so, which is why you can't work on Mars. And that's why people get divorced here.
Well, it just occurred to me that...
See, that was also a great tie together.
That was just... You put a bow on that.
Yeah.
But you kind of made me think that, today modern people, we're all... Like, a family is all segmented out. Like, the kids are in school. They're in different classes. They've got different sets of friends. Mom works at one job. Dad works at another job. And they've all got problems. But all their problems are different. And they're not experiencing them together. And they can't help each other with them. I mean, they can talk, they can commiserate, and they can, like, comfort each other to a degree, but they all have these different problems that none of the other members of the family can touch or really do anything about. Like, they're all working alone on their problems. But, in a more humane mode of living, a family faces their problems together. They have the same problems. Like, oh, we're experiencing famine. We're going to have to work together to scratch enough food together and that binds a family together. And when and it grows, serving one another for survival grows the love of a family and multiplies it. But that they've got a common problem they can work on. Or your example about releasing wolves into the suburbs, which is hilarious. But if the family is having to face those wolves together, that's gonna just bind them together. And we don't have that because we're all modern Western urbanites are all divided up, facing different problems. And I think, and
this is the conservative case for mass immigration, because you need low trust societies with high crime to build good families.
No, I don't think that.
And so,
I'll take the wolves. Thanks.
The more Mexican coyotes that we have coming across the border, which is sort of like a human wolf, right?
But the Mexican families are a lot stronger than ours because they have the MS-13. We miss the MS-13. They're sharing their problems together until they get wealthier and Americanized. They're sharing problems.
We have to have to save the American family. We have to bring the drug cartels here.
Well, here's the thing: they're here, but we still can't face them together because dad's right. At one job, mom's at one job, kids at one school.
Well, it has to be too dangerous to drive.
Yeah, and then there's no reason for dad to be around because the government puts him out of business. Because now with the poor American family is faced with the fact that they can get more money from the government apart than they can together.
Which is deliberate.
It is deliberate. And so, because then you've got more people that don't, because a family competes with the job for units of work and attention and brain space, right? And so the job, if now I will say that at the end of the day, a company is healthier when the families of the people that work for them are healthy, but they don't see it that way. They would say, if these people are spending time with their families and their cares and their work, they want that invested in the company. They want you to worry about the fate of the company more than you worry about the fate of your children.
Yeah.
And many people do, because that's what you have to do to move up the ladder. Like, you have to sacrifice that for the company. And that's very alienating. to a head of household or a mom, and you really can't be a good mom and have like this high powered corporate job at the same time. Or even just a crappy job that takes all your time.
Be a dad and do that too, though.
Yeah, no, either one. Yeah, you can't do a good job either way. I mean look at all these. That's why rich kids are so dysfunctional, is because their parents don't spend any time with them because they're out there making all that money. Mm-hmm. I mean, bottom line.
Yeah,
it's not a really complicated problem, and I've stayed away from faith and things because I want this discussion to like resonate with everybody, especially because I know not everybody that listens to this show is a Christian. But
well, this is the purpose of the filter at the beginning, because now we've only got people that are willing to tolerate the idea that space may be fake still here. That's the filter.
Yeah,
it's the great filter.
Right, but your marriage isn't about fulfilling yourself. It's you're taking on a sacred duty that God has ordained for you. And your duty is to your family and to God to do your job well as a member of a family. And if you don't have a sense of that sacred duty, when you think about your family and how you spend your time and what you sacrifice and who you sacrifice it to, then you're not going to do a good job. You're just not. There has to be a higher transcendent reason to invest all that a family takes, all that a family needs to work. Mm-hmm. And it can't just be about you and your own gratification, because that's a losing deal. Like being a good family man is gratifying. Don't get me wrong. It's wonderful. But when you're making the choices and doing the work, it's sacrificial. And you have to have a transcendent reason to do those things.
Yeah, Fabio on his cover doesn't have a transcendent reason.
No, he doesn't. And neither does the girl. Like, oh, yeah, it's like, I'm sure it's real tough for that girl that falls in love with Fabio. He's like whisking her off to exotic locations and feeding her peeled grapes and crap. I mean, like, where's the sacrifice in that? Yeah. That's why they have to kill. That's why they always have to kill Mr. Perfect if the story's going to keep going, because there's nowhere for that to go, but it collapses.
It's why the guy had to die in the Titanic movie.
Yeah. It's like, what were they going to do?
After then they got home and they were like, well, I guess what are we having for dinner?
Yeah. The whole basis of their relation. At some point you have
to do things that are practical. And then that can't be lovey-dovey where it's like, well, right. Okay, but what are we going to do about like, how are we going to get the kids to school?
Yeah. Well, the basis of their relationship was just, they were horny.
Right. Yeah. And she still when she died, she went to be with him instead of her husband. It shows you the loyalty.
Wait.
Rose was a horrible person.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She was.
She was a horrible person. She probably worked for the X team.
Probably.
Or would have wanted to.
She's a NASA technician.
Yeah, just walking around with her lanyard going beep and pretending after she's going to space. If you just beep your lanyard enough, you get to Mars.
So what about orbital space telescopes? Do you think those are real?
I'm not sure about those. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there.
We just put up the Webb. I think that just launched recently, or is about to. Something brand new space telescope.
I'm not sure about those. I don't. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. I just know that sometimes astronauts, so-called, are floating on a green screen in a harness. Right.
Well, when certain parts of the story are obviously fake, it's hard not to call everything into question. I'm very sympathetic.
It's hard not to. When you see that, it's hard not to be like, "Is that shuttle a hot air balloon?"
Yeah.
Even though it's probably not.
Yeah.
But you're like, "Am I still being punked here?" And I don't know what they're doing with that stuff. I don't know if those images are just made up in some cases. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that you could take an actual nice telescope that you can buy and you can point it at things, and it sort of sometimes looks like what they have.
Yeah.
So it has to be, but see, the lies always have to be based in truth to take.
Yeah.
Right? So it can't be completely manufactured. It has to have a basis of truth that then is covered over with some sort of lie. Otherwise, it doesn't. A spell can't work. You know, it's the old saying: if you want to move the rock, you have to kill the flower. Right?
What?
That was from a TV show. There was these witches, and they're explaining the lore of the magic in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And like they would telepathically move a rock or whatever with a spell, but to do it, they had to kill a flower first to balance out the nature.
Okay.
Right. And so the one time a witch tried to do it without killing the flower, her hand like withered instantly because she didn't have the balance.
Ooh.
So I think that's true. I think you have to to make a spell go, you have to sacrifice some part of something that's real. Like it has to be based in truth somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure to what degree. So I don't know. I don't know. I just know that sometimes they're hanging on a stupid harness.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're in front of a green screen. And you can't ever colonize Mars.
Yeah.
It won't work. If you were ever going to do space stuff, if it's even possible, you would have to look hard enough to find an Earth-like planet. That's the only way it could ever be done.
Right.
And
Which
that's really
I
far
doubt
away.
there is one. I think it's unreasonable that we would be looking for one when we already have one.
Right. Well, because the space rock is going to kill us. That's what Black Science Man says. And Carl Sagan said before him, and Elon Musk says.
It's so gay.
And the space rock has never killed anyone.
No, there's that one lady that was hit by one laying in bed.
Allegedly. She got hit. She had a bruise on her leg and a hole in her roof. And that's all we really have.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. How would they even know if a rock came from space? They're like, this is from space. How do you know?
There's a little sticker on it. Made in space.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.